Just a reminder that any thoughts, opinions, and points of views expressed during this podcast are those of the individual and not of the Grand Lodge, appendant body, or concordant body that individual may belong.
Is a new episode for Pen and Compass. We've got a great guest tonight, Steve Harrison. We're going to be talking about the Morgan Affair, the Missouri Lodge of Research, and he's written several books, and we're just going to jump right into it. Steve, how are you doing tonight? And glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming on board.
I'm doing just great, and it's an honor to be here.
And I said coming on board because we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming Masonicon Cruise 2025. So, well, cool. Well, I'm going to share real quick my screen and bring up a PowerPoint to go over some things. So, Steve, tell us you're a Masonic author. What made you want to do that? Actually,
It almost came naturally. I don't want to give you a weak answer on that, but I've just always been a writer. Before I retired, I wrote technical articles and participated in the production of a couple books, and it was just something I fell into. And then, of course, Freemasonry is such fertile ground for writers. And so I got into, I don't know, exploring the lives of different Freemasons, and a few books came out.
and there's a few of them right there. We were talking to Steve Harrison, and he was telling us about why he started writing books. And so, Steve, what do you feel like? You said it came naturally for you. So, what is being a Masonic author and publisher? What do you feel like your strengths whenever you step back and you think about yourself?
All I can go by is what people tell me. I think I can put together a good story and a good piece, and there are people out there who confirm that. About a lot of my books, people have told me that I sort of have a informal or colloquial style, which I try to do. I don't want the books really to be boring. And I don't know. I think maybe a strength is just digging into the lives of Freemasons and finding out if there's anything interesting and putting it together and publishing it.
So you come from a background, Lodge of Research. We're going to get into that, talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Well, here, I'll just go to that slide right here. So that's where your background is, and you've been how many years? I know you're a fellow as well as a member of Missouri Lodge of Research. How many members? I mean, how many years have you been a part of that?
Almost since the day I joined Freemasonry, which would be somewhere around 25. They, I had written a lot of articles and done a lot of things for the Grand Lodge of Missouri and their magazine. And uh, just after I retired, they asked me to become the editor of the Missouri Freemason magazine, which is now the Freemason magazine. And I edited that for a decade. And during that tenure, I was asked to join the advancing line of the Missouri Lodge of Research. So I was previously a member, and I'd done a lot of articles for them. And I went that route and served as their master in 2013 to 2014. And sometime in the interim, was also named a fellow.
And so I looked that up. There were what, five or six possible criteria. It could be either one or more. And I think you talked about it's either be a longtime editor of a Masonic newsletter or a periodical
Now,
within a state or within an area, something that's published, write books related and focused on Freemasonry. And what are the other two or three?
Well, those are the ones I'm aware of. I never researched it. I never went out and said, "Gee, I'd like to be a fellow," and researched it. And
Yeah.
so some of that is new to me. I think what they were trying to do was this: when they put that criteria out there, they wanted to make sure that if there was not a person, or if you weren't a person who had written a book or had many articles about Freemasonry, that you still might be able to qualify on other criteria. And so that's why there was a variety of things you could do to get in.
Yeah.
And like I say, I wasn't researching it. I wasn't trying to become a member, but one day I got a phone call and said, "You've been elected as a fellow of the Missouri Lodge of Research."
Yeah, and you're one of what, less than 12 from what the web.
I think there are I think it's closer to 15, but it's
Yeah.
pretty rare.
Yeah, it's not like there's hundreds of them running around in Missouri or
Exactly. And
around the US.
yeah, I mean, when I find myself in company with people like Alphonse Serza and Ray Denslow, and I sometimes hope they didn't make a mistake.
So, did you cross paths with either one of those two? And I know you've done this you've talked about those. I know Denslow, you've talked about him. Did you cross paths with Alphonse Sursa by any chance?
No, I mean, of course, they were both gone, and I mean dead
Okay.
before
Okay.
I came along. But I did meet a man who Serza might still have been alive. I met a man who knew Alphonse Serza
Hmm.
at the Scottish Rite in Chicago a few years ago, and it was a little disconcerting that he kept calling him Al.
Right.
So, and then of course Denslow, I Ray Denslow was long gone,
Yeah.
but we did take his memoirs and turn them into a two-volume book. And in doing that, I did get to meet his grandchildren
Hmm.
and work with them on putting those memoirs together.
And this is all through your work in the Missouri Lodge of Research, or was that the Grand Lodge level?
No, that was Missouri Lodge of Research.
Cool. So I have a connection. When I saw that on there, I was like, and I'm glad you brought up his name because I didn't put that in my notes, but it was in my psyche. And Alphonse Sursa was one of the people that one of my mentors, Tom Spencer, that actually the Masonic Lodge in the building that we were talking about, I'll be in tomorrow night. Yeah, the library is actually named after him because it was his baby for like the last 20 something years while he was alive. He recently passed away. But he would talk about Alphonse Sursa, and I would say, "So Tom, what's going on in the library?" And this is probably 10, 20 years ago. He go, "Got in some books and this, that, and the other." And I think his son, Alphonse's son, was in the Dallas Fort Worth area and became buddies with Tom. So yeah, that was that kind of legacy. You always, I think, you have to have somebody, even if it's not exactly what you end up doing. You have to have somebody turn you on to what's going on and drop some names, and just like in literature or music or anything, I think that's one of those guiding things that kind of find along the path. What do you think, Steve?
Well, I think it helps to have mentors and people you can look up to. And uh, when I became the editor of the Freemason magazine, there was a man who had come before me um, that I just really sort of took off from what he had done, and I tried to emulate him, and so yes, I think having mentors is possible is definitely something that really helps get started and get you on the road of what you want to do, not just within Freemasonry, but other disciplines as well.
Yeah.
His name was Jack Montgomery, J.C. Montgomery. He was by profession a Methodist minister, and He lived well into his 90s and was writing articles for me until the very end.
That's great. Well, let's talk about your books. So I think I have, you can correct me because my research sometimes is scatterbrain, but this was the first book that you came out with
That
related to
is,
Freemasonry, to
yes,
Freemasonry?
that is the first book that I came out with, and it came out of a discussion I was having with the Grand Master of Missouri, probably back in about maybe 2006. And we were just kicking things around on the steps of the Scottish Rite one time, and I think he made some off the cuff remark and said, that'd make a good book. And the next thing I knew, I was working on a book about the adventures that the Freemasons had as they came into the western half of the United States.
Right. Awesome. And so it says biographies in here, but it doesn't list like who is it famous Freemasons or
I put at
not as
the
well?
end of it biographies of famous Missouri Freemasons because I mainly was writing it for the brothers in Missouri, and it includes people like, of course, Truman, Lindbergh, Denslow, Mark Twain, Kit Carson, and a few others.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to talk about this book? And obviously, all like most of these are on Amazon, from what I found. And
Yes.
we're gonna put the links to so they can track you down and order it if after they watch this episode or while they're watching it.
Another book you've probably got on the list. I'll see this one is Freemasonry Crosses
Yeah.
the Mississippi.
Uh-huh.
And there's another one in the list called Freemasonry's Journey West.
Okay.
That is a smaller book with approximately the same story in it, but I was asked to do that as a special book uh, to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Freemasonry in Missouri. So they're not the same book, but the second one was something that we could distribute uh, in a cost-effective manner and essentially had some of the same stories in it.
Yeah, I didn't find that one. I guess that's through like the Grand Lodge. It would be on
Yeah, it's out
their
there
shop,
somewhere.
or their website. So
Yeah.
yeah, cool. Well, tell us about this. Looks like a who's who of Freemasonry. Tell us from
In a way, in a way it is. This book was my second book, and um, I just tried to put together very small stories. I'm talking about a couple paragraphs at most about each of the individuals that is in the book. And I was looking for stories that maybe had a little twist at the end or something like that. And it's illustrated. And the way I wrote that book, it took quite a while, was during that period, I was getting up every morning and trying to do a little research and come up with something about a famous or at least, I don't know, important Freemason that might be a little bit interesting. And then I published it on my blog. And the great thing that happened with that is I didn't even pay attention if anybody was reading it or what they were doing. And one day I got a call from a brother named Todd Creason, who had started the blog, The Midnight Freemasons. And he said he had seen those and he wondered if I would be interested in writing for the Midnight Freemasons. And eventually I said yes. I was pretty busy at the time. And that's how I was able to team up with some other contacts like Robert Johnson, who I think has been on this podcast.
Yep,
And
he's a big friend of ours. Yes.
so I got that going and then somehow wound up not too long after that being a part of his podcast for about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. I did a segment on it called The Masonic Minute. And the only reason I'm still not doing that is I just could not do that and write my latest book at the same time. but it put me in touch with that the group of guys and other guys who are now doing podcasts and are well-known Freemasons all over the country. So
We're, we're,
big
we're,
shout
we're-
out to Todd Creason,
yeah.
who saw me as a potential for that, and I got involved with them. So
There's
that's what came from this book. The stories in it are very short, and like I say, I like to put in a little twist or a little bit of interest uh, for um, for the reader.
well, that's great. To advance on kind of what you said about that group of guys around the country, I think this is the way you said it, or maybe nation or whatever. Yeah, there is kind of this national tribe that I would ask you to say we're kind of loosely uh, configured, and a lot of us know each other. And I have some pictures of that later. And but the cool thing is the true members of that group are there, and we get along, and people are very. I'm new to it. I'm not as long tenured as you are, and I'm kind of a Johnny come lately. And you walk up to someone at a big national meeting, you introduce yourself, and they're so welcoming, they're so kind, they're so nice. I try not to look too foolish in front of them, but it's really been one of the best experiences I've had in all my life is getting to spend time with some of we're going to show some pictures. We're going to do kind of some travels of Steve Harrison here in a little bit. But tell us about this book. You said this is kind of a precursor or is complementary to the Imperfect Storm book. Tell us a
It
little bit about
really
that.
is. Um, I didn't know you were going to find this one.
It's on
Uh,
Amazon, so
Yeah, well, it's just a quick little thing I did because it was so easy to publish. And it's a what, 19th century play, a farce, a comedy in which somebody gets confused about somebody else's identity. His name is supposed to be Mr. Thompson, and the guy never does understand that. And that's why he calls him Monsieur Thompson. And he keeps showing up at different places at different, sometimes inconvenient times. And every time he did, now this is 19th century humor, not 21st century humor, but the character at the door would utter the phrase, Monsieur Thompson again. And that got picked up with the Morgan affair in many newspaper articles where people would play off of it like it's a meme, and they would start the article with Monsieur Morgan again, because they were just pretty much tired of reading about the guy. And that was part of my research, and it was in the public domain, and I had a digital copy, and so I just published it and put it out there.
very nice.
It is not my writing. I just kind of
Yeah,
edited the thing
it's
and
a synopsis edited by and you make that very clear. But still, it's one of those things where it was written by this person. It was kind of over here lying in the old treasure room, and you just
yeah.
brought it out to share with all of us. So
Yeah, he wrote it. It is not 21st century humor. It's more like if you know, it's something he would have done on TikTok today.
well, but that's interesting that you're bringing that up. That everybody rails against the new technology. They rail against the new fad or whatever, and you're just going, well, this was happening 114 years ago, or
Yeah.
167 years ago, or something like that. There's nothing new under the sun, is there, Steve?
No, and the point of the whole thing was people, I wouldn't, Morgan was such a hot topic for so long that people just started making fun of it
Yeah,
and they got a little tired of it, to
they
tell you
got
the truth.
fatigue. Yeah, got
Yeah.
fatigue. Yeah, yeah. So Freemasons of Oak Island, and it kind of ties back in. This was obviously written whenever the National Treasure series was hitting the movies, right?
I can't remember the exact date. I'm always, I always want people to know I wrote this before the History Channel started doing its series on Oak Island. And I found out, there's some, I guess, allusion to the 13th degree and the Scottish Rite, or what is it, the seventh degree and the York Rite, and there are
Yeah.
similarities. And
Yeah.
I sort of tagged on to that and just wrote about specific Freemason stuff on Oak Island.
Right. Love it. That's crazy because so if you go and you watch what is it? I think it's episode 6 for us in Pin and Compass. One of my really good buddies is Matthew Roger Christmas. He's over in England and he's the Grand Secretary of Metro London now. But back then he wasn't whenever I first met him online. And I met him uh, in the continuing education group, the education group that Jacob Thompson runs
Mm-hmm.
out of St. Louis. And whenever we got locked down, I somehow stumbled across an invite and jumped on this meeting and ran into this guy. And literally, this podcast wouldn't exist if I hadn't have done that on that random Saturday or whatever 5 years ago.
Right.
So it's kind of crazy that you would bring up those 2 degrees because that's what Matthew and I started talking about
Well,
back
it's a
then.
very small book, and
Oops, sorry,
its real
like
purpose
53
was,
pages. Yeah.
yeah, its real purpose was that I had no intention of doing any kind of a book on it, but I did a presentation about it. And
Hmm.
then the presentation got to be so long that I had to pull part of the presentation out of it. And since I did that, I put it all in the book instead. It's really sort of a companion to the presentation.
So the presentation is really more of a course, is what you're saying. It's a, it's a, it's a,
I wouldn't call it a course. It's just that it got to be about an hour and a half long. And I said, I've got to get that at least back below an hour.
right.
I don't want people falling asleep on me. And so I took out a lot of stuff about the history of the Knights Templar and Jacques de Molay and all other kind of things that tied into it and came up with that little book.
Well, we're going to talk about the imperfect storm at the end of this segment, closer to the end of this segment. Um, but this is your next book. It's just come out
Just
this year.
published this year.
Yeah, this year. Even so, it's publication date 2023 there, and that's the one that's focused on the Morgan affair. And then anyway, but this is kind of we'll get to that. But this is kind of showing you here with Bill Schneider, who is a friend of mine also, and I've been privileged to hang out with Aaron Schumacher also.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
Masonic Week with Jacob, usually around Jacob Thompson. But Bill and I, whenever he's gone and done his General Grand Council, Cryptic Masons International um, leadership role, I've run into him at South Central Department Conference and a few other places along the way, and couldn't ask for two more fine representatives of the state of Missouri, but much less just human beings in general. They're great guys. So there you are, kind of one of your presentations back in the day, I guess, with
Yeah, it's a few years ago. This particular presentation is about what you see in the third degree.
hmm
And it emanated just from me wondering, is that a real journey that they're taking? Could you take that journey today? And where did they really go? And so I mapped out their journey and overlaid it over present day Israel and the time of King Solomon, and
right.
I came up with some facts about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and if you have experienced the second section of a Master Mason's degree, then you should know what we're talking about.
That's true.
And that's about all we'll say about that. So here's the very much younger but still bow tied and horn rimmed glasses, R.J. Johnson, Robert
Yep.
Johnson that we know
Yep.
and know and love. So looks like y'all are having a great time there. it's some conference or
Some conference, and
meeting or
Robert
something.
and I have been friends for many, many years.
I think this one I snatched off of your Facebook or his or something, and it was about 10 years ago when this was taken.
Sounds about right.
2015, 14, somewhere in there. So it was not to piggyback too much, but I'm still going to. Had an awesome opportunity to have breakfast with him while he was in San Antonio. All the other speakers kind of scattered and were flying out and everything on Sunday morning. And RJ and TJ, TJ Brumfeld, also he's like episode 4. So episode 4 and episode 5 of Pen and Compass went to breakfast with myself and then my cousin-in-law James, who had helped with our San Antonio Esoteric Summit also. And anyway, I got to have them experience what a real true like South Texas Mexican breakfast, authentic. We found like right down the access road, not even a 0.2 minute drive. Steve, we went and had this nice breakfast. So he's been bugging me about what kind of coffee was I drinking that day. So since then, but anyway, here's you and Chris Hodap.
Yep. I think that's a recent picture.
Yeah,
I guess one thing we have in common is we're both from Indianapolis.
right.
And so we always get started talking about that and bump into him every now and then at Masonic events.
And he's known, his fame comes from the Freemasons from Dummies series
Yes.
that he wrote. And help me out, was Brent Morse or is there someone else that I'm thinking
Brent
of?
Morris wrote An Idiot's Guide to
Okay.
Freemasonry.
Okay. So, but yeah, Chris wrote that. So and there you are. Was that the first time you got to do your presentation for An Imperfect Storm at
Oh,
the CME?
by no means
Okay.
was it the first time. However, this was for the MCME, Masonic Education Conference a
Midwest
few
Conference
weeks
on
ago.
Masonic. Yeah. So it's
And
yeah.
they really did not want me to do the standard. Well, I have now 3 Morgan presentations. They didn't want me really to talk about the Morgan affair. They wanted me to talk about the process I went through to write the book.
Yeah.
And so put a few tips in that. And so it was the first time I had given that presentation.
Yeah, and so so it's the MCME is Midwest Conference on Masonic Education, and the current curriculum focus topics that they want to have the presenters, the speakers engage in is the process. How do you do what you do and things like that. And that's also what we try to incorporate in a little bit of a holistic approach into Pen and Compass also. And and if I've been at things and it's really cool at the end of the day, even if everybody gives their presentations and talks and all these different presentations, you come back and you sit everybody down and you ask them 3 questions, and a lot of it's about tell us about your process and things. And in San Antonio, it was quite interesting. We did that, and I said something about what's your process or how do you prep or whatever. And I think the first guy that answered was Dirk Hughes from Michigan, and he says, "Oh, I procrastinate till the last possible minute." And so I was thinking about that round of answers today while I was preparing our production sheet and our PowerPoint that we're using on this recording. So yeah, guilty as charged. So Steve, there you are. This is at the MCME or another time?
No, this is in Ohio. I
Okay.
forget the name of the town, but the man standing next to me is Thurlow Weed the Fourth. And Thurlow Weed plays a major part in the book that I wrote. And it was kind of exciting to meet him and trade stories about his great, great, great uncle, who was one of the biggest anti-Masons that ever walked in this country. And of course, Thurlow Weed the Fourth is a very enthusiastic Freemason. That night was a lot of fun.
And that would be Morgan, would be the anti-Mason.
No, no, well, no, Thurlow Weed, as I said in the book, um, Rob Morris and Thurlow Weed were at that time probably the matter and
Okay.
antimatter of Freemasonry. They they just were the two top people in those two disciplines. And as you read through my book, Thurlow Weed was a very, very uh, enthusiastic anti-Mason. And here I met his, I don't know, great grandnephew, who was also named Thurlow Weed, and an enthusiastic Mason. Thurlow Weed would be turning over in his grave if he knew this.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book and talk about the Morgan affair just a little bit if you can. Tell people really quickly the highlights of what happened, just so they're familiar with it and we're not kind of talking out of sync with them.
I think the quick highlights would be we don't know much about William Morgan before he hit Batavia, New York, and he had been a stonemason. He had married a young woman as his wife, and they went to Toronto. His business burned down. So he came to New York, first Rochester, and then Batavia, and got work as a stonemason, and even started to be a little successful at it. We really do not believe that he was a legitimate Freemason. But he worked his way into the Masonic lodges there. And for a while, he had it pretty good. He was good at the ritual. And the problem was he had certain faults. For one thing, he was, I think you'd say, an alcoholic. He was a drunk. He could not handle his finances. And he was a braggart. And the Masons finally caught on to him. They got him fired from a job he had there. They excluded him from joining a Royal Arch chapter they were building there, even though he was a Royal Arch member elsewhere. So that got Morgan upset. He threatened to write a book exposing all the secrets of Freemasonry. That got the Masons upset, and through a series of events, they kidnapped Morgan and he disappeared. And nobody knew what happened to him. And he became, the Morgan affair was a very big item in the 19th century, more so than people today realize.
Yeah, it was wasn't it was used for political purposes.
Oh, it was, of course, I go into all of that in the book. It significantly affected the history of the United States, the politics in the United States, people's attitude toward Freemasonry, and it did not sort itself out until the end of the 19th century.
Right. Yeah. Well, very good. So, why did you call it the imperfect storm?
Well, we all know what a perfect storm is. That is when a whole bunch of things come together and form what they will call a perfect storm, a very violent, probably deadly storm. And as I looked at it and I said, you know, if you've got all this stuff coming together and you took part of that away, you would still have a very big storm. With the Morgan affair, the Freemasons' actions were so poorly thought out. If they had just backed off, if they had just done one thing, if they had backed off of Morgan, we would probably not even know who William Morgan was today, and the whole thing would have died down. So it did not take a bunch of things coming together. It took the Freemasons inability to back off of William Morgan and just step back, count to 10, take a breath, and just let him write his book, and we would not even know who he was today. So it was a matter of not being a perfect storm, but being something that should not have happened at all, but it did in fact turn out to be as big as a perfect storm. I guess you could say as a metaphor, but it was certainly something the Masons could have controlled and they didn't.
Right. Rodney, you like conspiracy theories? Hop on here. I want to invite in co-host, co-founder, co-everything, partner in crime, Rodney McGilvery, and he's probably dying to ask you a question right now or make a comment.
Yeah, this is probably like the biggest conspiracy theory that goes into modern thinking when people catch wind of the penalty of obligation and think that we actually kill people, that they actually go back to this conspiracy. And what's your thoughts on that, Steve?
They're all in the book. Actually, that may be a little bit not the case, because what I wanted to do was almost do a scientific analysis of what happened with the Morgan affair. And what I tried to put in the book was, if it goes in the book, it must be a hard, cold fact that I have researched and I have come up with this, and I'm going to report it like a reporter, not put my theories into it. So part of the Morgan affair, we got a lot of answers about the Morgan affair that have not been known for 200 years. And I guess my thought was I didn't want to put forth any more conspiracy theories. I wanted to clear up as much as I could. And surprisingly, there has been a whole lot in 200 years that people just did not uncover. And it's in the book.
That's very intriguing. Makes me want to go ahead and purchase a copy myself and dig right in.
That would be family members of the people involved, sort like historic documents and things like that, right, Steve?
We went through all that kind of stuff. We contacted Morgan family members. There were some that, I say we, because you don't do this kind of thing alone. But I had help contacting those members. Some of them cooperated, some of them didn't. And we found out a whole lot about the life of William Morgan, and we sorted through a lot of it.
Interesting.
What year did this case actually become a cold case?
Well, Morgan was kidnapped and disappeared on September 11th, 1826. I tell people in at least one of the presentations I've got, it became so big in the 19th century that it really is the other 9/11 in American history. And as far as when it became a cold case, I don't know that it's a cold case today, but it certainly lasted for the bulk of the 19th century. They erected a massive statue to William Morgan in Batavia Cemetery. Now, this is the anti-Masons that did this in 1882. And I guess you could say that was sort of the swan song for the big anti-Masonic movement. And maybe at that point it did become a cold case.
And that's on the cover of your book?
That's on the cover of the book. Yes, that statue. Right there. I think it's about 40 to 45 feet tall, and it's got a massive statue of Morgan on top.
Wow. And so he definitely was revered in the eyes of the anti-Mason.
That's very well put.
at an extreme level.
So they put it on top of a column or an obelisk?
It's on top of, I would call it a column.
Either one has
Yeah.
significance. I think that's funny. Anyway, so you alluded to kind of the way you got momentum was doing 1 minute um, spots on Whence Came You podcasts and
Right,
media, and then
right.
Midnight Masons. I didn't pull. I knew about that, but some reason I didn't get that into the PowerPoint. So tell us about your 1 minute Mason blog that you've had since 2006. 20 years. Wow.
This was the blog I was talking about that Todd Creason discovered that I was, putting out this little Masonic tidbit every day and contacted me and got me involved with the Midnight Freemasons writing group. And that's how it started. I just tried to find a little story about a historic Freemason or something in Freemasonry's past that I thought was interesting and just put it out there. And I'm still not doing that today. Every once in a while, I'll post some things um, that I think are of interest, and it's anytime I write an article, I'll put it out there. Anytime I did one of those I'm sorry, Masonic minutes for Robert Johnson, I would put it out there, and that's sort of what it is today.
Yeah, it's a repository for your expression over the
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I love it. No, it's great. And that's something that maybe the two hosts of this episode might need to start thinking about something like that. To one common place to have everything. So it does get over the years. So um,
I was thinking that as it was brought up earlier.
yeah. So there's some of the stuff you've been talking about, and people can contact you through the blog. There, we'll put that into there. Recently, you were in Kansas, hanging out with
Yes.
those folks, and R.J. Johnson again, and a lot of other guys and that we know.
RJ was there, and
Yep.
yes, a lot of other guys we know, Alex Powers. And this is one of your Masonicon events that are just they just offer all kinds of education. It's a full day. In fact, it's an evening and a day the next day. And it's these Masonicons, I've been to a few of them. They are great opportunities to meet other Freemasons from other areas in the country and to network with them and to get to know what Masonry is like in their area.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, we enjoy them also, and Rodney and I've been privileged to be a part of that. So well, we've got an event coming up, and this is where we're going to end our first segment here before we take a break. So tell me the backstory of how you got involved with, and you're actually our because I'm going on the Masonicon cruise also. We just had an episode that we did last week. We recorded it, and it's actually already up on our YouTube channel for Masonicon cruise. We're leaving on a Carnival cruise out of Galveston. Can't remember the name of the boat. It might be on there. Um, and going for 5 days down in the Gulf of whatever you want to call it, into the country of Mexico, Progreso and Cozumel. And day one that we're out at sea, we're going to have a little conference. We're going to have a little onboard conference. So how did you get involved with that?
Probably through a guy that I think know mutually. You mentioned him before, Doug Reese. Um, I think Chris Galloway's publishing company is publishing his next book and published his last book. And Doug and I are great friends, and somehow there's a connection there.
Yeah.
But one day I got a phone call or an email, I don't remember which, from Chris Galloway asking me if I would be the keynote speaker on this thing. And sounded good to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for it. So you're gonna talk and give your one of your three presentations on the Imperfect Storm book?
I'm going to give what I would consider the main one.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean no disrespect to any other Morgan presentation, but a lot of them are just, well, he came to Batavia and he got into it with the Freemasons and they kidnapped him and disappeared. In this presentation, in case there's somebody in the audience that hasn't heard about it, we're going to go through that in about a minute. But then what I really want to dig into is what caused this to happen? Why did the Freemasons become the way they were? The people, the Freemasons that did this are not somebody that you would vote into your lodge today. What happened to them? How did the fraternity sink that low? And then we want to kind of go through how did this affect American history? Because I think a lot of people don't realize that it had a big effect on
So
American history.
it's a
Uh,
watershed moment for sure.
yeah. And then we want to take a look at maybe some lessons we might have learned from this to make sure that Freemasonry doesn't go down that path again. And of course, for a little fun, we're going to go see if we can find William Morgan.
Interesting.
On journey.
Well, very cool. Well, that kind of wraps up what we wanted to cover in segment one of Pen and Compass with Steve Harrison on his episode showcasing his books and who he is as an author in Freemasonry. So we're going to take a quick break and come right back after this, and we'll see you in part two.